Most of us think a long day at work means sitting at a desk for 8 or maybe 10 hours, staring at a computer screen and counting the minutes until we can finally shut it down and head home. Now imagine a workday that doesn't end when the sun sets. Imagine starting before sunrise, climbing into a cockpit, and staying in that seat not for half a day, but for 30 hours, long enough to see the sunrise twice before your shift ends. That is life inside the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber, one of the most demanding and surreal jobs a pilot can ever experience. The B-2 isn't like other airplanes. It doesn't carry passengers, it doesn't offer a cabin crew, and there is no aisle to stretch your legs in when fatigue sets in. It's just two pilots, shoulder to shoulder, inside a narrow cockpit that's barely large enough for them to stand and move around a little. And yet, those two people are tasked with flying one of the most sophisticated machines in history, an aircraft designed to penetrate enemy defenses, avoid radar detection, and, if ordered, deliver weapons that can reshape the course of conflict. Because of its design, the B-2 can strike anywhere on Earth from bases in the United States. That global reach is impressive on paper, but it has a cost: time. Missions often stretch longer than a day, with pilots remaining airborne for nearly 30 continuous hours. Think about that. No hotel stop, no overnight rest, no real chance to walk away from the job until it's finished. You're strapped into your seat with the knowledge that every decision, every calculation, and every flick of a switch could have global consequences. For the outside world, the B-2's mystique lies in its stealth, the dark, almost alien-looking flying wing that disappears into radar shadows. For those inside, the challenge is much more personal. It's about stamina. It's about how to keep your body from shutting down when your mind can't afford to. It's about creating tiny routines that anchor you through the long, disorienting hours of cruising thousands of feet above the earth, surrounded by nothing but the hum of the engines and the occasional radio call that breaks the silence. Pilots in these missions quickly discover that survival doesn't just mean keeping the aircraft in the air, it means managing themselves. Fatigue creeps in slowly, not like a sudden crash, but like a heavy fog that thickens hour by hour. Your body starts to demand sleep, your stomach grumbles for food, and your muscles ache from sitting too long. And yet, the mission doesn't care about hunger or exhaustion. The mission only cares that the bomber stays on course, invisible to the enemy, until it returns home. So how do they do it? The truth is, there's no single secret. Instead, it's a mix of careful preparation, strict discipline, and a surprising amount of improvisation. Every pilot develops habits and rituals that help them get through. Some bring favorite snacks, others rely on caffeine, and many rotate their tasks with their co-pilot so that one mind is always sharp. They even develop strategies for what to eat, when to eat, and how to keep their minds occupied when the monotony threatens to wear them down. This story isn't about technology or geopolitics. It's about endurance. It's about the very human side of flying one of the world's most secretive and powerful aircraft. What does it take to stay awake, alert, and sharp for 30 hours straight? How do you balance precision flying with the basic human needs for food, rest, and sanity? To answer those questions, we'll step inside the cockpit not to marvel at its radar-absorbing skin or its billion-dollar price tag, but to see how the pilots themselves cope with the unrelenting reality of ultra-long missions. Their daily reality is a strange combination of high-tech strategy and low-tech survival tricks, of precision procedures and very ordinary meals eaten out of plastic bags. And that's where this journey begins. Not with missiles, not with stealth, but with the human story. Because even at the cutting edge of modern warfare, the smallest details, like when you sip water, what you pack for food, and how you break up the hours, can make all the difference. When you first hear that a single B-2 mission can stretch close to 30 hours, it sounds almost unbelievable, like someone misplaced a decimal point. 30 hours. More than a full day, sitting inside a flying wing with no ability to leave, walk around, or reset. But for the crews who fly these machines, that marathon is the reality they live and train for. Their entire sense of daily routine gets redefined. Forget the usual 9 to 5. When your office is a stealth bomber, time doesn't flow in normal increments. Instead, it bends around cycles of preparation, vigilance, fatigue, and recovery. The routine starts long before the jet's 4 massive engines spool up. Hours before takeoff, the 2 pilots who will share that cockpit meet in a secure planning room. There, their day is broken into layers of briefings. Intelligence officers deliver updates about weather patterns, satellite imagery, potential threats, and refueling slots. Mission planners walk them through targets, timing, and alternate routes. Medical officers might remind them about hydration and fatigue protocols. Each detail is a piece of a sprawling puzzle. Once airborne, there's no pausing to Google an answer or flipping through a manual. Everything has to be memorized, internalized, rehearsed. Those pre-flight hours carry a weight of ritual stretching muscles, reviewing contingency procedures, even running through emergency scenarios they hope they'll never need. And then, when the wheels finally leave the runway, a new rhythm takes over. The cockpit becomes their entire world, sealed away from daylight and fresh air, a bubble of instruments glowing softly in the dimness. The engines produce a steady bass hum low and almost hypnotic, like a giant mechanical heartbeat. It's both comforting and dangerous. Comforting, because the constancy means the jet is healthy. Dangerous, because monotony is the enemy on missions this long. Much of the flight is routine system monitoring. On autopilot, the B-2 glides like a ghost across oceans and continents, its radar signature nearly invisible. Outside, the view may be nothing more than an endless black sky or the blank blue of daylight above scattered clouds. In those stretches, time dilates. Hours crawl by, broken only by small tasks. A fuel check, a call to an AWACS, recalculating distance to the next rendezvous. That's where discipline counts most. The two pilots structure the monotony into cycles. One takes the lead, eyes scanning instruments, fingers on the controls, ears tuned for radio chatter. The other takes on support tasks, reviewing maps, verifying navigation points, checking messages, or simply stretching within the limited confines of the cockpit. After a while, they switch. It's not a formal handoff, but more of an unspoken dance, refined by training and trust. This rhythm leader and supporter then swap repeats across the mission, a subtle seesaw of focus that prevents burnout. Conversations become part of the pattern, too. Sometimes the pilots trade jokes, stories, or personal anecdotes, anything to break the silence. Other times they drift into companionable quiet, each in their own mental loop of checklists and thoughts. It's less about filling the silence and more about sensing when to talk and when to conserve mental energy. Food plays its role in the rhythm as well. Eating is not just about quelling hunger, it's about marking time. A sandwich at hour 6, a protein bar at hour 10, a can of cold brew around hour 16. Each snack becomes a mile marker in a long, featureless landscape. Drinking water isn't optional but mandatory because the cabin air is dry and dehydration creeps up without warning. Even the act of unwrapping a meal feels like a ritual, a tiny pause, a punctuation mark in the mission. Fatigue management is the most delicate balancing act of all. Unlike airliners with multiple crew members and designated rest bunks, the B-2 carries only 2 people. There is no backup crew waiting to step in. That means the pilots must manage their alertness with near-scientific precision. Micro-rests come into play. While one maintains full control, the other might close their eyes for a handful of minutes, headphones still on, mind tuned to the rhythm of the aircraft. It isn't true sleep, but even a brief moment of sensory rest can recharge enough clarity to push through the next stretch. Training prepares them for the simulating fatigue scenarios in simulators, teaching how to recognize when your partner is flagging and how to nudge each other back toward alertness without judgment. The cockpit itself shapes the cadence. It's not spacious. It doesn't allow long stretches or full-body movement. Pilots develop micro-routines, flexing their ankles, rolling their shoulders, stretching fingers to keep blood flowing. Even small adjustments to posture can become anchors of comfort. The limited environment teaches them to pay attention to their bodies in ways civilians rarely think about. And then there are the bursts of intensity, the moments when the routine is suddenly broken. An aerial refueling requires precision, flying, full attention, and steady nerves. Coordinating with tankers means sliding a 170-foot wingspan under a fuel boom at hundreds of miles per hour, often at night, sometimes in turbulence. In those moments, fatigue and monotony vanish. Adrenaline spikes, hands tighten, every nerve comes alive. And once the transfer is complete, the rhythm resumes back to long stretches of quiet monitoring, punctuated by the faint rustle of wrappers or the hiss of an opening water bottle. Time, during these missions, becomes elastic. Sometimes an hour feels like a day, sometimes 6 hours vanish in a blur. The sun might rise and set outside the cockpit windows without the pilots registering it in a normal way. Their world shrinks to digital readouts, instrument checks, the breathing of their partner beside them. They exist in a bubble where the outside world passes, unseen and unfelt. And through it all, there's an unspoken contract between the two. Each pilot knows they are tethered to the other. A lapse in attention, a missed alarm, or even a poorly timed snack could cascade into bigger problems. They become each other's safety net, monitoring, encouraging, even challenging when necessary. It's less like two co-workers and more like climbers roped together on a dangerous ascent. Survival depends on mutual trust. What makes the B-2's routine unique compared to other long-haul military missions is its combination of isolation and intimacy. A B-52 crew might number 5 or 6, with enough space for a microwave or a bunk. A transport aircraft might have room to stretch and swap pilots out. Submariners and astronauts deal with confinement too, but they have larger crews to share the burden. In the B-2, it's just 2 people. No backup, no relief, no escape. The cockpit becomes their entire world for over a day, and the rhythm they build is the only thing that keeps it bearable. And when the mission finally ends, the routine doesn't stop at touchdown. Engines cool, the aircraft is towed back into its hangar, and the pilots walk stiffly across the tarmac with skin dry from recycled air, eyes gritty from fatigue, and bodies aching from confinement. But before they can rest, there's debriefing. They report what worked, what didn't, where improvements can be made. They review their own performance, logging mental notes while the experience is fresh. Only then do they walk away, adrenaline fading, exhaustion hitting like a wave. The satisfaction of having endured the marathon is unspoken but deeply felt. That's the paradox of the B2 Spirit routine. It's not glamorous, not filled with cinematic dogfights or constant drama. It's quiet discipline, a grind of focus and endurance, a shared rhythm between two people keeping a billion-dollar aircraft alive across oceans and continents. And within that rhythm lies the very human art of survival, staying sharp, staying steady, and coming home in one piece. When people hear about a 30-hour bomber mission, the first thing that usually comes to mind is fuel. How can an aircraft remain airborne for that long without landing? The truth is, with aerial refueling, the B-2 Spirit can keep flying almost indefinitely. The stealth jet itself is not the weak link. The real limitation is the crew. Two pilots, strapped side by side inside one of the most advanced aircraft ever built, are responsible for guiding a machine that costs over $2 billion and carries nuclear or precision conventional payloads. They must remain sharp, alert, and capable of making flawless decisions in a high-stress environment. And to keep a human mind functioning at that level, you need something deceptively simple: food. Now, eating on a B-2 Spirit isn't like grabbing a meal on a commercial flight. There's no galley, no flight attendants rolling carts down an aisle, and certainly no hot meals served on a tray. The cockpit is more of a high-tech workstation than a cabin, a compact space filled with panels, switches, mission computers, and flight controls. There's hardly enough room for the pilots to stretch their legs, much less prepare food. That means everything has to be planned in advance and packed in tight. Before a mission, ground crew load coolers with pre-selected meals and snacks, carefully chosen for practicality. It's not gourmet dining, but it's survival fuel for some of the most mentally demanding hours a person can face. So what ends up in that cooler? Surprisingly, it's not so different from what you might find in a hiker's backpack or a student's lunchbox. Sandwiches are a mainstay because they're easy to prepare, require no heating, and can be eaten with one hand. Peanut butter and jelly, turkey and cheese, or simple wraps, foods that won't spoil too quickly and don't create a mess. Alongside them are protein bars, nuts, trail mix, jerky, and packs of dried fruit. These are compact, calorie-dense, and easy to consume in small bites. For hydration, bottled water is essential, supplemented with electrolyte packets to prevent fatigue and dehydration. Caffeine also plays a role. Cans of energy drinks, bottles of cold brew coffee, or caffeinated snack bars provide the boost needed to push through long stretches of darkness. There's something strangely ironic about the contrast. You're sitting inside one of the most expensive and secretive aircraft in the world, a flying wing designed to penetrate advanced radar networks and deliver strategic strikes. Yet when hunger sets in, you're unwrapping a sandwich that could have been made by a middle schooler before soccer practice. The machine represents the pinnacle of military technology, but the crew inside it are still governed by the same basic needs as anyone else: hunger, fatigue, and the craving for something familiar. But food in the B-2 isn't only about filling the stomach, it's about strategy. What a pilot eats, and when, directly affects performance. Heavy meals are avoided, since they can cause sluggishness and drowsiness. Too much sugar can lead to spikes and crashes, leaving the crew exhausted at critical moments. Instead, pilots snack periodically, keeping blood sugar stable and energy levels even. Before a high-focus task like aerial refueling, they might avoid eating altogether, knowing they'll need a steady hand and total concentration. Once the delicate maneuver is complete, they'll reward themselves with something more substantial. There's also an important psychological element. On a mission that can stretch across continents and oceans, monotony is one of the greatest enemies. Hours can pass with little visual change, just a black cockpit, a glowing instrument panel, and endless skies outside. Eating becomes a kind of punctuation mark in that long sentence of time. It breaks up the hours, offering a small ritual, a reminder of normal life. Sharing food with a fellow pilot builds camaraderie. Passing over a bag of trail mix or laughing about a squash sandwich can cut through the isolation and remind both crew members that they're human first, aviators second. Of course, eating in a B-2 isn't always smooth. Turbulence, sudden course corrections, or the cramped confines of the cockpit make even the simplest snack a challenge. Everything has to be secured. A spill could ruin sensitive equipment, and crumbs have an annoying way of finding their way into controls. Pilots learn to eat carefully, managing bottles and wrappers like surgeons. Water is consumed from tightly sealed containers, and anything sticky or greasy is usually avoided. Another interesting aspect is how food planning ties into mission secrecy. A B-2 crew doesn't always know exactly how long they'll be airborne when they take off. Missions can change mid-flight, targets can be updated, and refueling schedules can shift. That means food packs are designed with redundancy. There's always more than enough packed in extra sandwiches, extra energy bars, so that if the 30-hour mission stretches to 36, the pilots won't be left running on fumes. Comparisons with other aircraft highlight just how different the B-2 is. In larger bombers like the B-52 Stratofortress, there's space for a microwave or galley equipment, giving crews access to heated meals and even coffee pots. On long-haul transport aircraft like the C-17 Globemaster, crews can bring coolers and cook simple meals. But in the B-2, everything is stripped down to essentials. 2 people, 1 tiny space, and a cooler of snacks to sustain them through one of the most demanding jobs in aviation. And yet, for all its limitations, food in the B-2 is more than enough. Pilots often say that a well-timed snack can feel like a luxury at 3:00 a.m. over the Pacific, when the world outside is silent and the mission stretches on into the darkness. In those moments, biting into a sandwich or sipping lukewarm coffee from a thermos isn't just about calories. It's a thread of comfort, a reminder of home, a small act of normalcy in an otherwise extraordinary environment. So, when you imagine B-2 Spirit pilots flying their marathon missions, don't just picture cutting-edge stealth technology and high-stakes military precision. Picture 2 human beings, strapped into a cockpit, quietly passing a bag of peanuts back and forth, joking about how their energy drink is flat, or pausing between instrument scans to unwrap a protein bar. Because even in the heart of modern warfare's most advanced machine, the simplest truth holds. The aircraft may run on jet fuel, but the pilots run on food. Flying the B-2 Spirit isn't like climbing into a fighter jet where a pilot straps in, throttles forward, and starts pulling high G turns. It's something altogether different, part science experiment, part marathon, part act of trust in invisible technology. The aircraft itself is a marvel, a pure flying wing that seems more at home in a science fiction film than a hangar in Missouri. But once you're inside the cockpit, the futuristic silhouette gives way to a much more human reality: precision, discipline, and endurance. For the crew, every moment in the cockpit is a balance of control and surrender. The jet is too complex, too unstable, to be flown by hand in the traditional sense. Computers are the hidden third crew member, constantly making thousands of adjustments every second. The pilots guide, direct, and manage. But they also trust that the fly-by-wire system is doing what no human reflexes could ever accomplish. That relationship between man and machine is at the heart of flying the Spirit. The first thing to understand is that the B-2 doesn't fly like most airplanes because it isn't built like most airplanes. A conventional jet has vertical stabilizers and a tail to keep it stable, to give the pilot a keel in the air. The B-2 has none. Its sleek all-wing profile is both its greatest strength and its greatest weakness. The absence of stabilizers means radar waves slide off its body without reflection, stealth made real. But it also means that left on its own, the aircraft would be uncontrollable, prone to tumbling and yawing wildly. That's where the computers come in. The Spirit's fly-by-wire system is constantly correcting, adjusting, trimming. To the pilots, the controls feel smooth and deliberate, almost too smooth at times. Push the stick and the jet responds, but you're never really feeling the raw aerodynamics. Instead, you're feeling the filtered result of software deciding what the aircraft should do to stay in one piece. Pilots sometimes describe it as steering an idea rather than flying a machine. This doesn't mean the pilots are passengers. Quite the opposite. The computer provides stability, but the crew provides direction, judgment, and timing. Every course correction, every altitude change, every turn must be carefully considered. Unlike a nimble fighter, the B-2 is deliberate, patient, a creature of strategy rather than improvisation. Even with computer assistance, flying a 30-hour mission is no easy feat. The physical act of controlling the aircraft is only part of the story. The true challenge is mental. The B-2 demands a peculiar kind of endurance, the ability to stay sharp through endless monotony, and then pivot instantly into high-intensity action. Hours can drift by with little to do, but monitor instruments, log fuel consumption, and keep an eye on the weather radar. Then, with little warning, the crew might be lining up behind a tanker in turbulence at 300 hours, nerves taut as steel cables. The shift from quiet routine to high stakes can happen in seconds. That psychological whiplash from calm to critical and back again is perhaps the hardest part of the job. Teamwork in the B-2 cockpit isn't optional, it's survival. There are always 2 pilots on board, and they operate almost like a single organism. Roles overlap and bleed into one another. One may focus on flying while the other handles communication or navigation, but they switch constantly, covering for each other's fatigue, double-checking decisions, nudging each other back to focus when eyelids start to sag. Trust here goes beyond professionalism. You aren't just relying on your partner's skill, you're relying on their judgment, their instincts, their ability to keep you alive when you might not even notice your own mistakes. After hours of silence, a single reminder, check fuel again, carries more weight than a shouted order in a dogfight. Over time, the cockpit partnership becomes something almost intimate. You learn each other's rhythms, moods, even breathing patterns. When a pause means concentration, when it means fatigue, when it means something's wrong. Few other jobs bind people together in quite the same way. Physical comfort, or more accurately discomfort, plays its own role. Unlike larger bombers with room to stretch or even bunks to sleep in, the B-2 cockpit is compact. 2 ejection seats, a narrow aisle, a few storage spaces, that's it. For 30 hours, you exist in this capsule, strapped in, your world reduced to glowing screens, switches, and the soft hiss of airflow. movement is limited. Standing up isn't possible. At best, you shift in your seat, flex your legs, roll your shoulders. Pilots develop tiny routines to keep blood flowing, stretching toes, clenching fists, turning the neck side to side. Hydration becomes both a necessity and a challenge. So does eating. Meals are simple, functional, but they're more than fuel. They're markers of time, breaking the monotony into edible milestones. And then there's the body's quiet rebellion. Hours of dry air dehydrate the skin. Muscles stiffen. Eyes blur against the glow of screens. Fatigue isn't a sudden wall, but a creeping fog, slipping into the cockpit minute by minute. Managing that fog is as much a skill as flying itself. Flying the B-2 isn't just about staying airborne. It's about carrying an invisible weight. The Spirit isn't just an aircraft. It's a national asset, a symbol of deterrence, a weapon of last resort. Every mission carries strategic gravity. Even training runs are part of a larger posture, a message to the world that the U.S. can project power anywhere, anytime. That awareness never fully leaves the cockpit. Pilots know the stakes. They know that inside their aircraft lies the ability to alter geopolitics in a single strike. It's not a burden that crushes, but it lingers in the background like static. You are not flying for yourself. You are flying for the mission, the strategy, the nation. Paradoxically, much of the job is about remaining unseen. The Spirit is designed to slip through detection systems, to ghost across hostile skies without a ripple. That means careful route planning, disciplined radio silence, absolute trust in stealth shaping and coatings. The irony is stark. The most powerful bomber in the world spends most of its existence trying not to be noticed. The sense of invisibility isn't just tactical. It becomes personal. Outside the canopy, there is often nothing but endless ocean or a star-strewn sky. Hours may pass without spotting another aircraft, another light, another sign of life. The B-2 is a billion-dollar shadow, skimming silently over a planet that seems indifferent to its presence. That isolation is both eerie and profound. In those moments, the pilots may feel like astronauts not in space, but detached from the world, orbiting above it unseen. They are reminded, too, of responsibility. The machine beneath them represents years of design, billions of dollars, countless hours of maintenance and support, all converging into this single flight. And yet, in the cockpit, it boils down to just two people carrying that weight across continents. Landing the B-2 after 30 hours aloft is both relief and final trial. Fatigue presses on every nerve. Muscles ache, minds are dulled. But precision is demanded until the very end. The final approach isn't forgiving. Pilots describe the tension of those last minutes as a battle against themselves, fighting tired reflexes, steadying their focus, demanding one last surge of clarity. When the wheels finally touch down and the brakes engage, the release is immense. Engines spool down, systems power off, and for the first time in more than a day, the crew steps into open air. But exhaustion doesn't wait. By the time the debrief is finished and the jet is handed back to the ground crews, the only thought left is sleep. Flying the B-2 Spirit isn't glamorous in the cinematic sense. There are no swirling dogfights, no roaring afterburners. Its drama is quieter, heavier, defined by endurance, trust, and responsibility. The jet may be a marvel of stealth technology, but inside the cockpit, it all comes down to two human beings managing their energy, their focus, and their partnership hour after hour. And that may be the most remarkable truth about the Spirit. For all its technological brilliance, it is still flown the old-fashioned way by people. Two voices, two sets of hands, two minds, keeping a fragile, invisible giant aloft, carrying not just bombs or fuel, but the weight of global strategy.